Hello, everyone. It's always good to be here. I always enjoy the opportunity to be able to speak and just to actually share my thoughts regarding the course and how it impacts me in the variety aspect of my life, which is a lot that tends to go on. And I'm actually doing this talk actually in Portland, Maine. So I decided to get away for a few days, and a lot of that did have to do with my inner guidance and the inner voice telling me that it's time for you to get away. That you need time just to just get away from a lot of things that's going on right now in my life. And so it felt really good to be able to listen to that. Sometimes I don't do that, but this time I did, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm staying in Portland, Maine, with my ex-partner Matt, which a lot of some of you know, and he's very appreciative, allowing me to take time to do this talk today because he had plans for us today, and I told him I already committed to talk today. So we're very grateful that he is like, all right, I give you that hour, then you have to, then we're gonna go and do some things today. But I'm just really just appreciative of being able to have the opportunity to do this. And one of the things that I always do is I turn it over to the spirit to ask for guidance on exactly what is it that I want to share today, what's going on with me in my life at this moment. And the interesting thing is, a lot of things kept coming up for me, what I can talk about. I'm like, all right, that means a lot is happening for me right now in my life right now and at this moment. But the thing that kept resonating, that just kept showing up for me, is this whole concept of our inner voice and our inner guidance. So that just kept coming up for me. And I'm like, okay, what is it about our inner voice and our inner guidance that the spirit, wants me to talk about? And the thing is, when we take a moment and when we think about, especially when we think about the whole concept of voice, and where a lot of us, some of us, I know I do, sometimes we hear these little voices that comes into our minds and telling us what to do or not to do, or, different things like that. That's part of our voice. And then also part of the guidance is when we're like guided to do things, that can be a variety of different things. We're guided to process things. We're guided to go to work. We're guided to have friends. We're guided to get in a relationship. Such a variety of different things can exist regarding that aspect of it. And the other thing regarding voice, and the thing that really resonated, for me, that was sticking out, is that when we hear voices, hear that guidance, it can be seen sometimes in this world as a negative thing, as something that may cause harm to individuals. And I get that, and I understand that. For someone who majored in psychology, when people hear voices, we tend to want to work with them, regarding that aspect of it. But the thing that kept coming up for me is, what if we actually take a moment, take a step back, and look and see, and how can we actually embrace that? So embrace those voices that coming up, instead of allowing ourselves to be fearful of it, to allow it to come in a way in a loving and healing way, and not a fearful way. And I'm like, wow, that would be an interesting concept to be able to do that, to recognize that we all go through our things and different things are sent to us, but instead of seeing it as a negative thing, which is in the ego mind, but see it as a more spiritual way and a learning way and a healing way of how we can actually, go about that aspect of it. And the thing for me, that I think the reason why this really stuck out for me, today, and why I was reflecting and on this talk, is I have to tell you, my inner voice, my inner guidance lately has not been as high as it normally is in a spiritual way. It really has been where the ego mind, my ego thinking, my ego voice has been coming in and manifesting it in a way of me being very impatient, me being frustrated, me snapping at people, me not doing things in a very loving way. And I know that has to do is because I was not allowing myself to listen to that inner voice from the spirit perspective of what is it that I need to do to take care of myself, to be able to take a step back and realize what is causing this annoyance. What is it that is creating me to be so impatient and to lash out individuals in an unhealthy way and not doing it in a very productive manner? And that's because I allowed my inner voice from the ego perspective to come out, allowing the ego guidance to come out. And those are the moments when we have to take a break and take a step back and look at the bigger picture and see what's going on. How can we allow ourselves to shift and change that and to allow our true voice to come forward and to really allow ourselves to listen to it? Because in my mind, the Spirit is always talking to me, always guiding me. But yet, there's times where I allow the ego to enter, or allow the ego to really get in the forefront of my mind instead of the Spirit. And this shows up a lot at work. It is so amazing of how much work plays in my learning and how much it continues to allow me to learn, continue to challenge me to learn how to see it differently and not to allow myself to be stuck in a way that doesn't feel good, that is just not healthy for me. And I understand because if you're working, you will be around these individuals on such a daily basis, a good percentage of our lives. And so things are going to come up. And when they're coming up, in my mind, that means that, okay, Reverend Vincent, the Spirit is telling you there's something you need to learn here. There's something right now that you're not allowing yourself to follow or to pay attention to. And that's important for me to recognize that and to really, really look at it and not run away from it. Because that's what I want to do at times. I just want to run away, don't want to deal with it because it doesn't feel good. But I know when I do take the step and allow myself to feel and to experience whatever happening, it is all worth it. And the Spirit tells us this, of course, it is possible, even in this world, to hear only that voice and no other. It takes effort and great willingness to learn. It takes effort and great willingness to learn. And for me, that's what's happening at work. It's an opportunity for me to continue to learn, to continue to remember, to bring the course in every aspect of what's going on. And that is listening to that voice, listening to that beautiful, beautiful Spirit voice that's trying to guide me. And understand that, yes, my job's going to bring challenges to me to the point where I get frustrated, to the point that there are times when I'm not going to literally do this, but at times where I just want to strangle people because they just don't get it and just don't understand, in my mind, how to work with communities that are vulnerable and how continuously go backwards instead of forward, and how frustrating that gets, to the point where I want to go into my ego mind and lash out instead of taking a step back and realize, how can I do this? How can I convey my message in a more spiritual and loving way? And that is when I'm guided by the Spirit and not the ego, when I'm able to shift and see that and do that differently. It's not always easy because I recognize and I understand and I have the awareness that not everyone who I work with may not be in that spiritual frame, our spiritual essence, where I'm able to be able to look at it differently and be able to see it. And so my responsibility that I see is that for me to model that, for me to be able to see, like, okay, Vincent, you can actually lash at them, or you can take a deep breath and express your thoughts and your concern and your experience in a more loving way, not in an attack way, but in a way where you know you're coming from your truth because it was that voice of the spirit that guided you to be able to say what you needed to say. And this just came up just recently when I was approached to be able to help these college students who play football who wanted to get vaccinated. And so they reached out and asked if I can help to be able to come to one of their practices to be able to get them vaccinated. Because the coach felt that if they had to go somewhere else, that they were not going to show up. And so he felt that it was easier to actually bring it to them. And to me, that made perfect sense because I get that and I understand that. And that makes, sense that, what, bring it to them. And I've always been about bringing it to the people instead of us having them always coming to us. And so I put a request in like we're supposed to, and then it was denied by our individuals at my work who was in charge of that. And I was not happy. I was very pissed that they did it. It's like always the first reaction is no. Always no, instead of saying yes, and what can we do to make this happen? And that's my thinking, and that's the way I like to, come from. But yet my ego mind was getting enraged and I was getting frustrated, and I just wanted to just really, really just say some things that were not very pleasant and not very professional. But yet I held back and I asked for guidance from the Spirit. And it reminds me of this. The voice of the Holy Spirit is the call to atonement or the restoration of the integrity of the mind. When the atonement is complete and the whole sonship is healed, there will be no call to return, but what God creates is eternal. And for me, this was a good reminder for me just to take a moment, Vincent, and come from your spirit voice and your spirit guidance and not your ego one. And when I was able to do that, we was able to figure out and find a solution so we can go ahead and get these students vaccinated, these football players. And it took place and it happened. And the beauty of that is being there and just seeing their expression, their appreciation, their gratitude that we came to them. And the coach was just so grateful that we did that. And one of the great things about that was seeing how the students was interacting with one another and how they were supporting each other. And the reason why that happened is because I took a step back, I asked for guidance, and my guidance was to push forward with it and to not take no for an answer, to realize the importance it was to do this for the community. And it showed that day. It showed in those young men expression and eyes. And one of the players just touched my heart when they said that they wanted to do this because they wanted to play football because their goal is to get into the NFL. And it's just, those are the gifts that we give to individuals when we come to them, when we allow ourselves to listen to our inner voice of the Spirit and not our ego voice. And that, for me, is a reminder that my role was to push back. That even though my department always wants to say no immediately, that's their first reaction, is to understand the deeper meaning, the deeper purpose And that is to give back to the community as much as I possibly can without any barriers, to relieve those barriers, to be able to see the beauty and the expression of these young people was the gift that I knew that because I shifted and saw it differently, I was able to allow that to happen, to achieve for that. And it's not always easy. It's always a challenge, and especially in other aspects of my life, especially when it comes to relationships. The Course says this: you are the kingdom of heaven, but you have let the belief in darkness enter your minds, and so you need a new light. The Holy Spirit is the radiance that you must let banish the idea of darkness. You have let the belief in darkness enter your mind. And when we let darkness enter our minds, in my mind, that's our ego mind. That's when we're allowing our ego voice to come forward. That's when we're allowing our ego to guide us. And I was recently in a situation like that where I clearly decided not to, for some reason, not to listen to my inner guidance, which is the spirit, and to go with my ego mind and my ego guidance. It's, there's this person that I've been dating for a while, and they wanted us to go out for a weekend and hang out. And this individual lives in the East Bay across the bridge, and they don't have a lot of transportation. So a lot of times I go and pick them up, and then we go do whatever we need to do. Well, this particular weekend, I knew I had a lot going on, and I knew that there's no way I'm gonna be able to pick them up and take them back because I just have so much happening. And I heard the spirit guiding me and telling me, saying, Vincent, you need to let them know that they're gonna have to figure out a way to come to San Francisco if they want to see you. That's what spirit was telling me, and I kept hearing it, but I put it to the side and I decided to go ahead and get them. It was not a good weekend. I was resentful. Every little thing they did, it bugged me, and it was not in a good space, to the point where it almost ended where we blow up, where I literally went off on them. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I allowed myself to listen to my ego mind instead of my spirit mind, which was telling me what I needed to do. And so what happened was, during that weekend, when I was getting in that space where I wasn't present and enjoying the time with them, when I had to take them back and was in the car when I blew up at them, and it was ugly. The things I said was not, let's say it was not very spiritual, and it was not very course-like, what came out of my mouth regarding that aspect of it. But then I was guided to pull over. So I got off the freeway, went to the gas station, parked the car, and said, I'm gonna get some water and some snack. So I went in there, and I know part of it was for me to recollect myself, to get myself back into that space. And that's what the spirit was telling me to do. So I did that, and I got back to the car. And then I allowed myself I was guided to apologize of how I reacted. And more than that, to share where I was coming from and what was that about. And then they had the opportunity to do the exact same thing. And that for me was a reminder of how important it is for us to know that these littlest things happens, and our spirit is always talking to us and letting us know. But the question is, are we going to pay attention to it? Are we going to put it to the side? And for me, when I did not pay attention to it, what did it do? It took a beautiful weekend away, because I got so resentful on the littlest things that normally I would do like, whatever, let it go by. The voices of the spirit, the guidance of the spirit is in us. It is always speaking to us. The thing is, are we truly ready to allow ourselves to listen to it? Are we ready to allow ourselves to move forward when the spirit is guiding us to do the thing that is right for us? Because the spirit knows that. They are aware of it. And we know our ego does not want us to do that. but it is allowing ourselves to put it to the forefront. And for me, this is huge lessons that I'm learning, work-wise and also relationship-wise, is to bring the spirit voice, the spirit guidance in every single thing I do. And for me to be very vigilant about it. Because when things are going right, that is when the ego really wants to try to enter into our minds. But yet we have a spiritual essence in us to allow ourselves to let that go and to listen, truly listen to that guidance that is in us. Because that inner voice will bring us to the place where we want to be, which is, in my mind, a place of peacefulness, a place of loving, and a place of healing. And that is my talk.
Woke up my eyes to see, woke up my head to beat, woke up my heart to be free, woke up our world with you and me. I've opened up my heart, I'm at the start. I save the world, I save the world, I save the world, I save the world.